In the first video in this series, I looked at building infantry forces for a flexible tournament list. If you haven't looked at that one, I'll put the link in the description below. Both Battlefront and the Plastic Soldier Company have late-war plastic British infantry, and we looked at using these to field infantry and mechanised lists, as well as providing infantry support units for armoured lists. This video is going to look at armoured options for our flexible lists. Armour is going to be a little bit more involved, with a few extra options you'll need to choose from. The main tank people think of when you talk about late-war British armour is the Sherman. My 11th Armoured Division infantry list can include tanks from 29th Armoured Brigade. These allow me to field Shermans and Sherman Fireflies as support units for my infantry. A standard support platoon here is 2 or 3 Sherman 5s, with a Sherman 5C Firefly with the 17-pounder gun to give some extra punch. My Shermans here are from the Plastic Soldier Company. Plastic Soldier Company have an excellent Sherman 5 box set with 5 tanks. This gives me 2 or 3 Sherman 5s and a Firefly, leaving 1 or 2 tanks left over. This box set is more than enough to build a supporting armoured platoon for my infantry list. Battlefront also have a plastic Sherman 5 box set, BBX-27 Sherman Armoured Platoon. This also has 5 vehicles. Battlefront's plastic Shermans have come a long way since the frankly appalling kits they initially supplied with the open fire box set. Either of these box sets would give you sufficient tanks for a support platoon of an infantry list. Battlefront tanks are just slightly bigger than the Plastic Soldier Company versions, so probably not a good idea to mix them within a unit. However, we are looking at a flexible list, so the next step would be to have enough tanks to field an armoured company if we wanted to. If I wanted to build an armoured list around one of the 29th Armoured Brigade units, the initial box set would be a good start. This would build the company commander and 2 IC tanks for the Armoured Squadron HQ, as well as a 2 Sherman platoon with a Firefly for an armoured platoon. However, we'd still be short 1 tank and 1 compulsory platoon, so I would need another box of Sherman 5s to round it out to a full Armoured Squadron tank force. 2 boxes of either Plastic Soldier Company or Battlefront Shermans should give us exactly enough tanks, including Fireflies. My own solution is a bit more roundabout. The British used mixed units of Shermans, and I have some spare M4A2s I could use, and I converted some M4A1 cast hulls with the extra Firefly turrets from the original box to make a Firefly 1C. This version of the Firefly used the composite M4 hull, which had a cast hull front mated to a welded hull back half, so using the M4A1 hulls is not quite right, but my conversions look fine for the table. So using a mix of the Shermans I have on hand, I could field a mixed unit of an Armoured Squadron HQ and 2 compulsory armoured platoons. However, I'm sure I'll end up with another Plastic Soldier Company M4A4 box set soon. British tank forces should make use of their special abilities. These include tow hooks, so tanks can transport anti-tank guns and carry the gun teams as passengers to get your guns forward. Another rule British tanks should remember is semi-indirect fire. Tanks with semi-indirect fire that didn't move in the movement step shooting at targets all over 16 inches can re-roll misses. So this means British tanks are best employed at long range, pounding the enemy. The rate of fire of stationary guns, particularly 17-pounders, and re-rolling misses is too good an advantage to waste. However, there are possibilities other than Shermans for providing armoured units for my lists. My main list actually uses Cromwells and Challengers from the 11th Armoured Division's Armoured Reconnaissance Squadron. For my infantry lists, this is usually a support attachment of a platoon of 2 or 3 Cromwell 4s and an A30 Challenger armed with a 17-pounder gun. The Cromwells are interesting because they move as light tanks at 16 inches cross-country. Even the Challenger tools along at that speed, but this speed and the good gun are balanced out by the tank being overloaded and having no HE. The no HE rule means the Challenger can't attack infantry or gun teams, while overloaded means it bogs on a roll of 1 or 2 when taking a bogging check, so best to keep it away from obstacles. The other wrinkle here is the crew of these units are sometimes rated confident trained, so they're not veterans like most of the rest of the list. Both Plastic Soldier Company and Battlefront have Cromwell box sets that come with 5 tanks. One box will give me a regular armoured reconnaissance platoon of 3 Cromwells, which will need to be rounded out with a resin and metal A30 Challenger. The box enables me to field an armoured reconnaissance platoon to support an infantry or motor platoon list, with 2 Cromwells left over. My Cromwells are from the Plastic Soldier Company. They're absolutely beautiful kits. The Challenger is Battlefront resin and metal, so detail is a bit softer, but the units look fine on the table. If you wanted to stick with all plastic, some lists allow you to substitute a Sherman Firefly for the Challenger. But the advantage of the Challenger is its speed matches the Cromwell's, and it has protected ammo, and a stationary rate of fire of 3. These are all advantages it's worth keeping in mind. In keeping with the idea of a flexible list, I would need another box if I wanted to field an Armoured Reconnaissance Squadron list. So the 2 leftover tanks from my first box would form the Company Commander and 2 IC tanks for the Company HQ, while another box set would give me 3 more Cromwells for a second Armoured Reconnaissance platoon. The 2 leftover tanks from this second box could be fielded as Cromwell CS tanks, armed with the 95mm howitzer, which is a Company HQ support option. So 2 box sets of Cromwells from either manufacturer with 2 resin metal Battlefront Challengers will field an Armoured Reconnaissance HQ, with 2 95mm support tanks and 2 armoured reconnaissance platoons with Cromwells and Challengers. A platoon from my existing infantry could then be used to supply a lorried infantry or motor battalion platoon as a supporting unit. Tactically, if fielding Cromwells, I would suggest using their superior mobility to try and manoeuvre to get flank shots on enemy armour. I intend to try and use them in a sort of sword and shield tactic in concert with anti-tank guns, and try to make sure at least one of these units is firing into the enemy flank. So we've looked at Shermans and Cromwells, but if I want some British armour with a bit more punch in late war, I can field Comets. Comets are the high point in development of the British cruiser tank line during the war. They keep the nippy light tank movement of the Cromwells with a bit more front armour. But the big difference is the gun. Comets are armed with the 77mm Ordnance quick-firing gun, a development of the 17-pounder modified to fit better into a tank turret. Battlefront make a superb plastic Comet, and again 2 5-tank box sets will build a HQ section and 2 armoured platoons for an armoured list, or a single box to field a platoon for infantry support. Of course, Shermans, Cromwells and Comets aren't the only tanks you can field, but they're the common late war options. Things like Churchills and other British tanks tend to be infantry support in the Northwest European theatre, so they're not really suited to our flexible late war 11th Armoured Division list. So let's look at where we're up to with our flexible list. In the previous video we identified that a HQ and 2 combat platoons of infantry would be sufficient to field lorried infantry and motor battalion lists. The same infantry stands would be suitable for providing infantry support units for armoured, armoured reconnaissance and armoured car lists. A single box set of British late war infantry from either the Plastic Soldier Company or Battlefront would be all we need to accomplish this. In this video we've looked at armour. A single 5-tank box of Shermans, Cromwells or Comets would be enough to provide a tank platoon to support an infantry list. The Cromwell Armoured Reconnaissance Platoon would need an A30 Challenger to round this out. A second 5-vehicle box of our chosen tanks would be enough to field the forces for an armoured or armoured reconnaissance list. Again, we would need to add another Challenger to the Cromwell unit, but that would give us 2 spare Cromwells, and either manufacturer's box set gives us the option to field these in the HQ unit as Cromwell CSs, armed with a 95mm howitzer. In the next video I'll look at support options for our flexible list, including armoured cars, anti-tank guns, artillery, machine guns and mortars. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to Fog of War to make sure you don't miss out.